After the Sorbonne, she had made it more than that, had apprenticed herself to one of the finest fashion photographers in Paris for 6 months, had then joined Paris Match as a staff photographer. Her reputation had soared astonishingly within 1 short year, but it was not enough, not nearly enough, and when she asked to be assigned to Vietnam, they had laughed at her. So she had resigned, turned freelance, and in a final confrontation with her grandfather, had forced from him a promise to use all his formidable political power to obtain for her the necessary credentials from the Department of Defense. It was a new Anne-Marie he had seen that day, a girl filled with a single-minded ruthlessness which had surprised him, and yet had also filled him with reluctant admiration. 6 months, he had said, 6 months only, and she had promised, knowing beyond any shadow of a doubt that she would break that promise. Which she did, for when her time was up, it was too late to turn back. She was famous, her material used by every major magazine in Europe and America. Time, Paris Match, Life, had all clamoured for the exclusive services of this mad French girl who had jumped with the paratroopers at Khartoum. The girl for whom no assignment was too rough or too dangerous. Whatever it was she was looking for, she discovered what war was about, at least in Vietnam. No set-piece battles, no trumpets in the wind, no distant drum to stir the heart. It was savage street fighting in Saigon during the Tet Offensive. It was the swamps of the Mekong Delta, the jungles of the Central Highlands, the leg ulcers that ate their way through the bone like acid, leaving scars which would never go away. Which brought her to today. A morning spent waiting in the rain at Plekik, trying to arrange transportation to Din To, until she'd managed to thumb a lift in the medevac. God, but she was tired, more tired than she had ever been in her life. It occurred to her that perhaps she'd reached the end of something. She frowned slightly, and then the crew chief called out sharply. He was hanging in the open doorway, pointing to where a flame had soared into the sky a few hundred yards to the east. The medevac swung towards it and started to go down, followed by the Huey Cobra gunship. Anne-Marie was on her feet and standing beside the crew chief, peering out. There was the burnt-out wreck of a helicopter in a corner of a paddy field, several bodies sprawled beside it. The man who waved frantically from the dike was in American uniform. The medevac went on down, her escort circling warily, and Anne-Marie locked a lens into place on one of her Nikons and started to take pictures one after the other, braced against the crew chief's shoulder. He turned his head to smile at her once, and then, when they were no more than 30 feet up, she realized, with a strange kind of detachment, that the face she was focusing on below was Vietnamese, not American. A couple of heavy machine guns opened up from the jungle 50 yards away, and at that range they couldn't miss. The crew chief didn't stand a chance, standing in the open door. Bullets hammered into him, punching him back against Anne-Marie, who was hurled against the medical supplies. She pushed him to one side and got to one knee. The young medic was huddled in the corner, clutching a bloody arm, and as another solid burst of machine gun fire raked the cockpit, she heard the pilot cry out. She lurched forward, grabbing at a strut for support. At the same moment, the aircraft lifted violently, and she was thrown out through the open door to fall into the mud and water of the paddy field. The medevac bucked 20 or 30 feet up in the air, veered sharply to the left, and exploded in a great ball of fire, burning fuel and debris scattering like shrapnel. Anne-Marie managed to stand, plastered with mud, and found herself facing the man on the dike in American uniform, who, she could see now, was very definitely Vietnamese. The rifle he pointed at her was a Russian AK-47. Further along the dike, half a dozen Viet Cong in straw hats and black pajamas climbed from the ditch and moved towards her. The Huey Cobra swept in, its heavy machine guns kicking dirt along the dike, driving the Viet Cong backwards into the ditch. Anne-Marie glanced up and the gunship hovered. Then 40 or 50 North Vietnamese regular troops in khaki uniforms appeared from the jungle on the far side of the paddy field and started to fire at the gunship with everything they had. The gunship moved towards them, loosing off its rocket pods, and the Vietnamese beat a hasty retreat back into the jungle. The gunship turned and flew away to the south for perhaps a quarter of a mile, then proceeded to fly round the entire area in a slow circle. Anne-Marie crouched against the dike, trying to catch her breath, then stood up slowly. It was very quiet, and she looked about her at the carnage, the burnt-out helicopter, the bodies partially covered.